Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to regional session, reliability, flexibility for the carbon neutral Central West East Asia. Bit long name, but hope we can use to. My name is Serik Jarkimbaev. I'm an energy specialist at ADB. I'm glad you're all here. I will moderate the first subsession and give a short presentation. The second subsession will be moderated by my colleague, Andre. As you know, our Central West East Asia countries have set ambitious renewable targets. And to meet these targets, they need to increase the flexibility of their power systems. Today, we are going to discuss the different ways how to increase flexibility, including cross-border trade of excess renewable energy and hydropower, which could play an important role in grid balancing and energy security for our countries. The main objective of this session is to share the knowledge and experience between which could be relevant for the Central and West Asia countries in terms of power trade opportunities, setting up infrastructure and institutional arrangements also. The session will also highlight the latest technological innovations for resilient infrastructure, for greater renewable energy uptake and power trade. We have a great line of speakers today. They come from US, South Korea, Denmark, Kazakhstan, Sweden. But before I introduce the speakers, I would like to call Mr. Jun Ho Hwan, who is an ADB Energy Sector Director for Central West East Asia countries, for opening remark. Please.
Honorable guests, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcoming you today to Asia Clean Energy Forum, a crucial platform for advancing our shared vision of a sustainable and prosperous future for Asia. I'm very delighted and proud to have so many panel members, participants, and many familiar faces gathered today in these sessions to discuss the crucial issues surrounding energy transition to clean energy. The theme of this particular regional session, reliability and flexibility for carbon neutral Central West East Asia countries. They highlight the importance of innovation and collaboration in achieving a carbon neutral future. Our region is at the crucial juncture in the energy transition, with all member countries having set aggressive and ambitious renewable targets under the Paris Agreement. The Asian Development Bank is committed to support all member countries in accelerating their energy transitions. And in that endeavor, we have prioritized investment in clean energy infrastructure that enhance grid flexibility and reliability, which are essential for successfully integrating renewable energy into the power systems. To highlight some of the key projects that we are collaborating on in the region, ADB is supporting Green Hydrogen Initiative in Georgia as a clean energy source, battery energy storage system in Georgia, Mongolia, and Pakistan, renewable energy enabling development in Pakistan and Uzbekistan, focusing on digitalization, expansion, and modernization of transmission and distribution sector. Coal to gas transition project in Kazakhstan that reduce greenhouse gas emission for heating supply, and also grid expansion project to enhance the grid flexibility. We are also recognizing that the cross-border power trade has immense potential for decarbonizing the power sector and increasing the flexibility. So ADB is very proud to support those projects in the Central Asia region including the reconnection of Tajikistan to the Central Asian power system, and also expansion and expansion of the interconnection and expansion of the hydropower generation capacity in Tajikistan and the Kyrgyz Republic. And our effort for clean energy project in the region so far are already yielding impressive results. We have seen a significant increase in the renewable energy capacity in our region, the improved energy access, and also reduction in the carbon emission in the power sector. But much work remains, and ADB will continue to collaborate closely with our partners to develop innovative solutions that promote flexibility, reliability, and sustainability in the region for the power systems. In closing, I would like to thank all of you for your commitment to clean energy and for your participation in this important session. And by working together, I'm confident that we can build a cleaner and more sustainable future for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you for this words, Junho, and setting the scene for the session, highlighting our projects in the region. I would like to remind everyone that to save your question until all the speakers have finished it, when we will have an opportunity to ask your questions at the end. Now I'd like to give a brief presentation of our main topic today. Can we start? Yep, please. So let's start this presentation. Next slide, please. Here you can see the exporting and importing countries in Europe. Norway, Sweden export their hydropower most of the time, while Denmark with 60% of renewable energy imports most of the time. Maybe not so most of it, but it's a partially imported. So next. Now, can you imagine Norway, Denmark, Sweden, and Finland each trying to build a self-sufficient, completely separate energy system, each for their own country? It might look like what you see on the screen. So every country is thinking about self-sufficiency, energy security. Unfortunately, we have not prepared such analysis for all our countries in the region, but I think the picture is similar. So every country seeks energy security, but we seem to have different understanding of what energy security is. Means the simplest definition, next please, the simplest definition of the energy security was what I found used by International Energy Agency, refers to energy security as uninterrupted availability of energy sources at an affordable price. There are many tools how to achieve this energy security. And I believe that European countries have the right understanding of energy security and are using their natural capabilities and interconnections very well to provide reliable and affordable energy to their consumers. Next, please. What do we have now as a plans for renewables? Thanks to my colleague Martin, we can show you how much generating capacity that has been commissioned in Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. It's just, for example, two countries over the last 6+ decades. That's about 42 gigawatts of installed capacity for both countries, Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan only, built over 60+ years. Now, both countries want to build 53 gigawatts in 6 years, of which 31 gigawatts, or almost 60%, is renewable energy sources. So historically, both countries lack flexible capacity, and capacity deviation are covered mainly by Russian grid, with the cost of such balancing increasing every year. Given the ambitious RES targets, this dependency will grow. Next, please. To reduce future deviation, Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, for example, require batteries up to 30% of installed wind and solar capacity for each new major projects. But what is the real cost of this source of flexibility compared to other options? The simple calculations, which we've done here, you can see that we're almost 1 cent for storage services multiplied by the annual production of one of the major RES projects in our region, give us a total payment for battery over 25 years around $870 million. Comparing the cost of BESS, which is my conservative assessment based number is $350 per kilowatt hours. It's a turnkey contract including associated facilities, infrastructures. We can say that an investor can completely replace battery storage 4 times in 25 years. To replace 4 times in 25 years battery energy storage means that the average lithium-ion batteries with 6,000 cycles per life cycle should work 1,443 cycles per year, or 4 cycles per day. 4 cycles per day. We can discuss it later also, but please keep this number in mind. But we don't know how many cycles the TSO needs or required for these particular investors. And I'm afraid that investor has a general idea about how this battery will be used. And so it means that investor add all uncertainties and risk into the tariff. So that's why we have this tariff and we have such cost. At the same time, significant flexibility potential remains untapped for the region. For example, the hourly and sub-hourly scheduling instead of 24 hours ahead scheduling, which we used to have in our countries. RES forecasting, also not, it's a huge potential for RES forecasting to increase certainty and reduce reserve capacity. Renewable energy participation, balancing, efficient balancing market, demand response, regional interconnection, and reserves sharing. Importantly, the region has available infrastructure and significant flexible reserve potential in Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan. Next slide. Yep. We are a development institution. We fully support the green path of our developing countries, but at the same time, let's think about the affordability of the solution offered to our clients and consumers. Thank you for your attention. That's it from my side. Now, I'd like to introduce the first speaker, Dr. Jacqueline Cochran, Director of the Grid Planning and Analysis Center of the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, United States. NREL is a long-term partner for ADB, and Dr. Cochran worked there since 2009. Can we welcome Dr. Cochran to the stage? Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, ADB, for organizing this. Reliability is one of my favorite topics, and also I love Central Asia. I lived there in Kazakhstan for 2 years. So I'm going to provide some context setting on flexibility, but also how some of those issues change as we go towards 100% renewable electricity. Don't know. No, it's all the way at the end. And get a quick preview. All right. Okay, so as we know, costs of renewables are falling, and that is leading to multiple projections from all kinds of institutions about the growth of renewable energy that will be coming in the system. So this is some kind of projections from NREL's tool called our standard scenarios that looks at, okay, what are typical, what are the policies, what are costs of different renewable energy technologies and fuel prices and so forth. And what is the optimal generation transmission mix over through 2050? This top chart shows us the current policies, and on the left we have generation in terawatt hours, and on the right we have capacity. And each color represents a different generation type. So yellow is solar, wind is blue, storage is represented in pink. You have some purple there, which is natural gas. And what we are seeing is that even with today's policies, which is not, we don't have like a national policy for decarbonization in the US, there's a significant growth in wind and solar. And the bottom chart, and I don't know how well you can see it because this I know does block the bottom parts of slides, but the bottom chart is with a 100% decarbonization scenario by 2035. It looks very similar. It has a lot of wind and solar. And the difference is that that natural gas that's unabated in the top chart has to be captured in the bottom. And so there are some other smaller differences too, which I'll get into. But there's a lot of renewable energy coming on the system. And this leads to balancing challenges at 3 time scales. The first time scale is short term. So think seconds to a minute or hourly. But like, how do you keep managing the balance of load, using your regulating reserves? That is pretty straightforward. The middle chart is what we call diurnal balancing. And this means like from hour to the full day. So there's a lot of variability in the sun over the course of the day. There's variability in the wind over the course of the day. And even demand for electricity, of course, fluctuates over the day. And then finally, we have the time scale of seasonal, which is also solar in the northern hemisphere is stronger in June than it is in December. Wind also has seasonality to it. And again, so does the demand for electricity. So we want to be thinking about kind of managing flexibility at these 3 different time scales. Another way to think about these 3 time scales is, when does it happen? The bottom axis is how much renewables do you have on the grid, and then the y-axis is difficulty, the degree of difficulty. That's short-term variability under an hour. We've largely solved it. This is not a concern for grid operators. A lot of the techniques that have been improved to manage the variability of wind and solar have been implemented. That second box also pretty solved, but there's still ongoing research on managing that day-to-day flexibility. Again, this time period, it's like you're trying to manage having too little energy during some times of the day and too much at other times. And then that seasonal is where a lot of our focus is today. And I will go into that in more detail. So the short-term balancing challenge, we just, in that previous presentation, went over all of these ideas, right? The key message here is there's a lot of the flexibility supply curve, it's essentially saying, think of flexibility at the system level, and you have a lot of sources of flexibility to be able to manage the change in supply and demand over the course of, hour or day and whatnot. And it's important to think of as many options as you can and choose the least cost options that you have. So let's go through an example. Let's talk about one of the diurnal mismatch problems. This is the duck curve, if anyone has heard of this. Essentially, the top line there is the demand for electricity. The green line that curves up, that's the solar generation. The red line at the bottom is wind generation. And that middle sort of turquoise light blue line that's the net load. It's essentially, what do you need to supply with other sources of generation that's not solar and wind to meet the supply demand balance. It's called a duck curve because it's shaped like a duck. And the more solar you add on the system, or the more demand comes up in the evening, if people are coming home and charging electric vehicles, the steeper that ramp is. We had been solving this. Originally, we were focusing on, well, how do we address that sort of flexibility need? And we were originally focusing on the thermal fleet. You know, what can we do to the coal plants, natural gas plants, to allow them to have more flexibility so that the coal plant can turn down during the day when that's so, you know, because if you're adding a lot more solar, you know, you want your coal plant to turn down during the day or your natural gas plant to turn down during the day, but then quickly ramp up in the evening. So again, a lot of the focus for a while was on how can we have better flexibility from the thermal plants. And that led us to changes in how we think about thermal plant operations. So the old way was sort of base load, you know, you run it all the time, but if you have a lot of wind and solar in the system, you're gonna operate it more flexibly. This works for a while, but at some point you keep adding more and more solar and you just have too much during the day. And you don't need, it doesn't matter how low you're curtailing, I mean, how low you're bringing down your flexible thermal generation, you just have too much. And so that ends up, you know, you're curtailing solar, you're curtailing, it's costing more because you're not using all that energy. And then this happened. So the last time I was here in ACEF was 2019. And since then, the battery prices have fallen remarkably. And the battery storage capacity addition worldwide has increased. That far bar there is 2023 global storage additions. So this has a great pairing with solar. So again, we're not, you know, we've already used our flexibility resources that we talked about in this presentation and in the previous presentation. But when you have a lot more solar, storage can really support the value of solar. So this chart is looking at the demand for electricity over 2 days. The dotted line is net load with solar. So that's essentially trying to use that in comparison with doubling that solar, which is the orange. So orange is twice as much solar as in the dotted line. What you can see is that it helps narrow the peak of that, you know, when we're thinking about that duck curve, right? You're narrowing the peak. And it's easier to supply that short duration period with 4-hour storage than if that peak was sort of big and broad. So the more solar that gets out of the system, the peakier it gets, and it's a nice complement with storage. What that allows us to do is add more storage and solar to the system. They don't have to be in the same location, but adding them together helps get more mileage out of that solar, and it can get, you know, along with wind and other sources of clean energy, can get you most of the way towards 100% grid. Because of these falling battery prices, this is a chart that shows today's solar capacity, and this is IEA's analysis of solar capacity in 2030. Each of those second 2 bars are the projected storage capacity in 2030. One under existing policies and one under a more decarbonized set of policies. Okay, so that brings us now to the seasonal problem. So far, now we've been managing the basic flexibility. We've added batteries. We can go a lot farther. And now we still have the seasonal challenge to master. So let me give you some examples of what that seasonality looks like. This chart is showing solar and wind generation as if it were at the identical spot in the United States. And each of these is a month's worth of generation. The blue is wind and the red is solar. And there's a seasonality to it. I don't know if this has a, okay, well, there's, so for example, in the June, July, which is sort of down in the middle, there's a lot of solar. There's not as much wind there. You see a lot of wind at other times of the year. And what we end up with is times of the year where we have a lot of wind and solar, and then other times of the year where we still need more. So here's, let's walk through California as an example. Let's imagine that California's got 95% renewable energy. They've built, the first number, 38% is how much PV they have on the system, 19% is how much wind, 20% is other renewables. And over the course of the year, at the beginning of the year, they have too little renewable energy. Then they get into a period in the springtime when the demand isn't high. They have much too much renewable energy on the system. Then we're back in August, September. That's the hot period where demand soars. Again, we're back to not having enough. And then it's dipping down and back and forth towards the end of the year. So if you added more wind and solar to this state, you would be adding a lot more wind and solar when you don't need it, and you're kind of just chipping away at the other time periods. This is the same with all the other states as well in the US. Florida, Texas, New York on the bottom, all of them have a seasonality issue where you can get most of your way towards a decarbonized system, but you're still having to chip away at that last bit. This is not unique to renewables. Even in our conventional power system, it's really hard and expensive to meet those peak time periods. So this chart is looking at how do you meet demand for electricity over the year with a conventional fleet? Well, you have base load power that's run all the time. That's that bottom section. And then you have intermediate capacity. So that's maybe running most all the year, but not the full 24 hours a day. And then you've got that peaking capacity, which you're only using, you know, when in extreme times of the year. That is a third of the capacity in our system is just for that peaking time. So it's contributing to 2% of generation, but it's 1/3 of our peak. It's 1/3 of our capacity. That translates to higher costs. That's what we're looking at on the right side. This is levelized cost of energy for natural gas. The first 63% of demand, if you're using natural gas, it's pretty low cents per kilowatt hour. It's very similar price for the next 35%. But then you go to the last 10% of demand, and that levelized cost, because you're not using it very much, gets higher. And then that last 2% of demand, it's even more expensive. So what's the difference between this and renewables? Renewables is more complicated because there is a seasonality of the renewables, but it's fundamentally, you're trying to replace the conventional power that's on the system with something cleaner. And it's going to be the most expensive part of that sort of decarbonization journey. So this is the same chart I showed you before, the 100% by 2035 analysis. And what we're looking at is we need new sources of firm capacity to help meet that last 10% or so of the year. And what ideally this is you want something with a low, that has low capital costs, right? It's fine to have high operating costs, high fuel costs, because you're not using it very much, right? That 2% of the year, 5% of the year, but you're gonna have to build a lot of these, so you don't want it to cost much. And so some of the examples of firm capacity that people are thinking about today are hydrogen or natural gas or biofuels coupled with carbon capture. So here are some options. You know, you could do biomass and you could use it straight, or you could refine it into biogas. You could, but largely a lot of people are thinking about how can you take that extra renewable energy from those, you know, we saw that there are time periods where we have too much, right? We can use that extra electricity and then create hydrogen, and then you can further refine hydrogen to make it like a synthetic fuel, or you can, like, or ammonia, or you could just keep it as hydrogen, and then you can either run it through a fuel cell or a combustion turbine. So, wait, I want to stop it, and okay, I'm going to freeze it for a minute so I can just walk through what we're looking at. This is from our Los Angeles study where we looked at how to go to 100% renewable electricity, and there's a lot on the screen, so I'm just going to orient you for a minute. The same colors are as before. Yellows are solar, that kind of orange is solar and batteries. The blue is wind that's being imported from other parts of the country. And the pinks are the batteries or pumped hydro. This is the Los Angeles, you know, this is the city of Los Angeles. That is sort of, I don't know if you can see because of the table, but like that's our dispatch stack over 5 days. And then that beige black columns is how much generation is coming from within the city and how much generation are they importing from outside the city. And then that just shows you where Los Angeles is compared to the rest of the West. They have great transmission to the Pacific Northwest and the Rocky Mountains where you can bring in good wind, and they have great transmission to elsewhere in the Southwest for good solar. So they've got great resources. And so now let me try this again and let it go. So now we're looking at a June day. The demand for electricity isn't especially high, but we're using a lot of that extra generation to charge our batteries. Like right now, the sun is about to set, so the solar generation is coming down, and you're going to start to see more of like the pinks. That's a hybrid plant, with the orange. But here are the pinks, and that's helping to balance the demand for electricity. Again, this is a June day. They're also bringing in wind from other parts of the state, geothermal's running some, and then as the sun rises again, you're getting a lot of solar generation. And even in this June day, you're still getting most of your electricity from outside the city because it's cheaper than building inside a big major city. But so that previous slide, this is what the utilities dream of because it's all easy, no problems. But we plan our power system around the times where things go wrong. And that's this November week. And so now we're looking at a week where there is not as much wind and solar on the system. And that means that we're barely bringing enough generation into the city during the day to be able to meet demand, much less charge all those batteries. So we're going to need something at night because those batteries are going to start to discharge. You can manage 1 or 2 nights of bad renewables, but when you have 5 nights of bad renewables, it gets harder. And so what we're doing instead on this November week, this is an example of sort of that last 10% problem. It is low, it's not especially high demand, but there's a lot of, we need something to bolster that generation because there's not as much wind and solar. And that's represented in the green. And this is hydrogen. And so in this study, we put hydrogen combustion turbines where the natural gas plants are today because it takes advantage of the transmission lines. And so that means that, beginning you're only running a little bit at night, but over many days of bad renewables, some of these hydrogen plants are just running around the clock. Now they're expensive to run, but again, you're only using it in certain times. And this is sort of the value of thinking about what's the technologies in your countries that could help meet this sort of the last mile of getting to 100% renewable energy. And that's it. Oh, no, sorry, one more. I just wanted to note that I've just talked about one slice of the challenge of getting 100%. And of course, there's a lot more issues, and a lot of you are experts on all kinds of issues related to this. But we have permitting problems. We have how do you design the wholesale rates or the retail rates so that you get the grid services that you need? How do you manage the growth in distributed energy resource, cyber risks, other physical attacks, and so forth. So lots of topics. But that was just a snapshot of one of them. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gocham, for the innovative presentation. And I hope everyone also noticed how important grids for this case also. Now I'd like to introduce the second speaker, Mr. Bakhtiyor Shamsiyev from the Coordination Dispatch Center of Energia of CAPS. Mr. Shamsiyev is the head of planning and electrical load calculation division. Please welcome him to the stage.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to make a presentation. Currently, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan operate in parallel as part of the CAPS. And through the north of the Kazakhstan, it works in parallel with Russia Federation, which performs frequency control. Since December 2009, Tajik energy system has been operating in isolation from the caps, but also has importing, exporting electric power according to Allen scheme to Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Afghanistan. In the table, you can find the installed capacity, total generation, and demand of caps by 2023. The map here shows the future development electric power network of Central Asia to 2030. The main areas of cooperation by and between Central Asia power systems are trade in the electric energy and reserve sharing, development of interstate power grids, joint construction of power plants, planning the integrated development of energy system. The power system of CAPS and Turkmenistan has been actively cooperating in recent years in the field of trade in electrical energy and in the provision of system services. The Turkmenistan energy export electrical energy almost all year round. But since it doesn't operate in parallel with CAPS, the power system provided supply dedicated generators, which is separated from the main system of the Turkmenistan and was connected to Uzbekistan power grid. And exports are carried out to the energy system of Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan. In order to rationally use water and energy sources, the energy system of Tajikistan and Uzbekistan annually enter into contracts for supply of electric energy in summer from Tajikistan to Uzbekistan. At the same time, idle water discharge at hydropower stations in Tajikistan are minimized. Fuel consumption in the energy system of Uzbekistan is reduced, and of course, it becomes possible to start repair company of the units at the thermal power plants. In recent year, in summer-winter period, electricity has been supplied to Kyrgyzstan from Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan in order to preserve the amount of water in Takhtagul reservoir. For example, no, it's okay. For example, in summer, in autumn-winter period, electricity was also supplied from Russia Federation to Kyrgyzstan in transit through the network of the Kazakhstan. Currently, the process to restoring parallel operation in the energy system of Tajikistan is underway. A network schedule for connecting to the CAPS has been drawn up with the completion of work in May-June of this year. Tajikistan plans to connect to CAPS in 2 stages. On first stage, they should be connected on the south of Uzbekistan by 2 500 kV lines and 2 220 kV lines. On the second stage, they should be connected by Suk substation to the existing overhead line in Uzbekistan according to the tie-in scheme, as well as a tie-in scheme, and as well as a new 500 kV transmission line will be constructed to interconnect the new Sirdarya power station to substation Suk. ADB supports the projects on linking Tajikistan power system to CAPS. But even with these implementations of this measure, the supply of power from Tajikistan to Kyrgyzstan or Kazakhstan turns out to be limited due to the inefficient capacity of the sections between the central and eastern part of the Uzbekistan. It is necessary to build additional lines between the central and eastern part of the Uzbekistan, of the system of Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan has such kind of plans in the future, but in the near future, Uzbekistan invited CAS 1,000 participants to consider the possibility to connect the 500 kV Datka-Sukt line to Uzbekistan substation and to Lachin substation. This will allow to increase the capacity of Central East interface, significantly increase voltage levels in Fergana Valley, use Datka-Sukt overhead line year round with a high load, and dividing a long time, about 500 kilometers, in 2 and 3 parts will facilitate its operating in normal and repair mode. Getting the Turkmenistan power system connected to CAPS is a key issue to be reviewed. The Turkmenistan energy system currently operates in parallel with Iran, whereas it operates with CAPS in the island mode with standalone generators to export the electricity. And at the same time, Turkmenistan has built 500 transmission lines between Iran and Afghanistan. It is planned to use 400 kV transformer to get linked with Iran in parallel operation mode, which has voltage level 400 kV. Afghanistan plans to operate in parallel with CAPS, and Turkmenistan will get connect to Afghanistan with back-to-back substation to be built on the Turkmenistan-Afghanistan interface. We believe that it is more expedient for Turkmenistan to switch to operate in parallel with the CAPS, while connection with Iran should be made with back-to-back, which is less costly. The next main area of cooperation is joint construction of power plants. The Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan signed a memorandum of intent of the Kambarata HPP-1 constructed project. Negotiations are progressing between Tajikistan and Uzbekistan and between Tajikistan and Kazakhstan on electricity supply from the Ragun. As lately updated, the stakeholders from Uzbekistan and Tajikistan came to an agreement on this matter. This is the CAPS stakeholders have been integrated the renewables sources. Here you can find the numbers. This is about Uzbekistan. And this slide. This is example of an energy system with high share of renewable energy sources. Spain, February 6, 2023. Here you can see the renewable energy sources generation is 63% during a day and 40% at night. The unevenness of the schedule created by the solar plants is compensated by uploading wind power plants to 5 gigawatts. HPPs with reservoirs is around 3.6 gigawatts, and HPP hydropower plants they transferred from generation mode to consumption mode, and from 2.8 gigawatts they reduced to minus 1.5 gigawatts. It's daytime, and to minus 2.8 gigawatts at the night. And thermal power plants with gas, they also uploading to 5 gigawatts, and with coal, it's less than 1%, less than 1 gigawatt. The ways of effectively integrated energy sources. As I mentioned, the large-scale penetration of renewable energy with the variable and intermittent nature of generation has a serious effect on the stability of power system. In this regard, the national energy system are conducting studies that assess the impact of this source on the power grid, and technical requirements for connection to the grid are being developed. Experts from CDC Energia also participate in several studies conducted by USAID, the World Bank, and other organizations. The results show that for successful integration of renewable energies into CAPS, joint coordinated efforts are needed to develop a balancing management capacity in the region. It is also necessary to make adjustment in the principles of emergency control of power energy systems, taking into account the renewable integration. Introduce the centralized emergency control system and automatic generation control system. This is subject for discussion, but I have no time. You can find it in presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bakhtiyor. As we can see, despite the high level of integration between CAPS countries, we have some technical issues, bottlenecks, and risks triggered by renewables for entire CAPS. Our next speaker is Alfredo Bano, Senior Energy Specialist at EDB. Can we welcome him on the stage to share his insights and lessons learned from the NAPSI project?
Okay, hi, good afternoon, everyone. So we've been talking for a long time already in Central Asia. Let's move a little bit northeast and see what is happening in a cold place like Mongolia and the neighbors. So as you can see, well, I'm going to go fast through the first slides because you all are familiar with regional power systems, or at least what we should have. So far, we don't have regional power systems in this part of the world. There is the Southeast Asia or the South Asia or the Central Asia power system is still in the making. Well, we have some cross-border lines, and that's something that I'm going to be speaking about shortly. And ADB supported some of these lines. One is an HVDC between India and Bangladesh, and then another one is AC between Laos and Vietnam. And the idea is that what happens in Northeast Asia, we have plenty of renewable energy resources, solar and wind, as you can see in these resource maps. And we have power-hungry economies, particularly the Chinese economy. And later we also the plan is that Northeast Asia will interconnect and we'll have also Japan and the Republic of Korea, which are also power-hungry economies. So this addresses, again, what the WEC calls the energy trilemma. And we have certain energy security in some areas, relative environmental sustainability because it's still very much dependent on fossil fuels, particularly on coal. And then the energy equity. There is certain affordability, but it could be improved. So ADB in 2015 carried out a technical assistance project that it was called a strategy for NAPSI, for the Northeast Asia Power System Integration. This was a very high-level study. It looked at the whole region and what would be the potential for developing the renewable energy resource and interconnected it with the different load centers in China, Republic of Korea, Japan, and also having some demand and supply from the Russian Federation. So Mongolia is in the middle with very small demand, but very large resource energy potential for exports. So after this first study, the government of Mongolia requested a follow-up. And the follow-up is the promotion of NAPSI that was approved in 2021. And it's actually being finalized, the final reports this month. We had the final workshop 2 weeks ago in Ulaanbaatar, where we discussed all the results with stakeholders from Mongolia, from Korea, and from China. So the idea of this study was to look at three aspects of this project. One is how would go about developing 5 gigawatts of solar and wind in Mongolia. What type of cross-border transmission system would have, whether it's HVDC, whether it's HVAC, whether it's one main transmission line or several, and also looking at the commercial and regulatory aspects of it. How you would go about PPAs, the different regulatory standards for the transmission systems and whatnot. The reports will be made available on our website, most likely early July, as soon as we approve them and they're able to be published. So you'll have access to all the detailed analysis. There are around 400 pages of reports, so it's a good read for this summer, for those of you interested. Now, very simply, I don't want to go about the whole analysis that was done by the consulting team, but in general, the consultants looked at resource potential for wind, resource potential for solar, different technologies, whether we use 7.5 megawatt turbines or 4.5, whether the terrain is complex or the terrain is flat. For solar, whether we have bifacial or monofacial, tracker, no tracker, different options, different prices, and kind of the best solutions, even though we're close to each other. It was for wind, 4.5 megawatts in complex terrain, for an LCOE of around $31.3 per megawatt hour. And then for solar PV, the monofacial fixed was not the best solution, but it was the most cost-effective one, and the value was around 36.2. And then, as discussed by Dr. Cochran before, there's obviously the issue of seasonality. And then we played with different scenarios, different estimations as well. And in this graph on the right, you can see the worst case for wind. If you have 1 gigawatt pure wind, you can see the green column changing along the year, the 12 months. The same if you have only solar PV, and then if you have a mix of 50-50. But we have a scenario of different percentage variations. And you can see that one support each other. And that was the idea of developing 5 gigawatts that would maximize the year production of electricity, accounting for the seasonality. Now, the other part of the report looked at the power system interconnection system, whether it's going to be a single corridor when you have all the 5 gigawatts located in one area far from the border, so you need a very large transmission line that maybe is an HVDC. Or maybe we have different 1 gigawatt farms and along the border, and then it's easier to develop individual dedicated power lines. Or we have a progressive system. So you start building one and you start exporting, and then you build another one a few miles away, and then you connect that internally, and you have a generation power grid that is connected to a larger system that crosses the border, or a mix of all. So we have a very dense scenario analysis with the different options. So in general, after crushing a little bit these numbers, we get to a number between $8 and $10 per megawatt hour of transmission cost, which, if you remember, adds to the 31 or 36, which is an average of $33, $34, for a total of 45, around that number, dollars per megawatt hour. This is the cost of export. So any investor needs to make more than that. This is, again, a very high level estimations without having done field resource analysis or anything of that sort. But again, these figures depend very much where is the capacity factor that you're going to be having in the system, how much power you're going to be transmitting every day, etc. Similarly, whether you have a choice of line, which initially can be AC, and then you can convert to DC, keeping the same towers and the same conductors, etc. And finally, well, I want to touch upon a little bit on this because sometimes we don't consider whether a power interconnection system should have batteries. And we usually think about large transmission lines and thick conductors and whatnot. And then we can see that considering the price of batteries went down significantly, we can look at having one system without batteries, and then you need to design your power lines. If you have a 1 gigawatt peak generation, then you should have 1 gigawatt transmission capacity. That, right, makes sense? The one on the left. But then what happens if we want to save money on the conductors? Then we can have a little bit of a battery that is going to allow us to have a maximum capacity of 0.5 gigawatt, and it's enough because we're going to be controlling that dispatch, and we're not going to be going over 500 megawatts anytime during the day. And the same goes if we go to a 75% storage. Obviously, the price increases, but then the capacity of the line doesn't need to be that large. So you're saving money on the other side. And again, we have a model, cost estimates, that is going to be looking at the most optimal solution for this. And then finally, we get to perhaps the lion's share of the work, which is the regulatory and commercial arrangements. The technical part, many of us engineers here can see it quite through, but then when we start looking at contracts and treaties and politics that get affected with cross-border projects, then problems kind of start appearing. But Mongolia, which is what this work was for, the government of Mongolia, they have a very limited regulatory arrangements, which is only for their own consumption. So the current law doesn't contemplate any power exports, even though there is trading, but that's kind of outside of that framework. So the idea is to develop first a bilateral treaty between the two countries, PRC and Mongolia. This has to be owned and championed by both governments. It cannot happen otherwise. And then it's going into the high-level regulation, into laws. And the proposal is to develop a new law on renewable energy generation specific for exports to the PRC. So it's essentially a law framework that is going to cover for this very large and very ambitious project. And then we go into the nitty-gritty and the technical regulation and standards, the grid code, whether we use international standards or we expand current standards, or we just essentially copy-paste wherever the Chinese are doing because they're going to buy the power. And then we go finally into the commercial and market regulation. Commercial market regulation, again, there are plenty of different options. You can do PPAs, you can go into the Chinese market, and then the investors have to think how to calculate their eventual profits. And then for next steps, the government was quite happy with the results of the study, and they wanted us to follow up on additional support to start preparing for an eventual NAPSI project in the future. So the main steps for us, it would be support this bilateral engagement and conversations between the two governments in collaboration, obviously, with UNESCAP and others who has been very active as well in this work. And then developing, as I mentioned before, the laws, regulations, the new grid code and standards that are going to be supporting foreign investments. Essentially, all the money has to come from outside Mongolia. Mongolia is a very small country to accomplish this by themselves. How to develop a cross-border transmission line, which is most likely being owned by the two countries, it's not going to be a one party only. How to maximize revenue generation and, importantly, revenue sharing, so the community is affected and the country as a whole benefits from this. How to build capacity of the regulator, who is going to be doing all this job, and they have to get more skills and more people to develop all these regulations. And finally, how to analyze potential business models and market structures that are going to be optimal for this type of project, considering who is going to be the buyer of the electricity, not only in the PRC, but also later in Japan and Republic of Korea. So this is a new opportunity for us to keep supporting this work, and this is what we could share with you for now. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Alfredo. Very insightful and valuable information. Now I'd like to invite Ms. Zulpa Atazieva to the stage. She is an advisor of Climate Change Project Office Kazakhstan to share Kazakhstan targets in renewables and carbon neutrality. Please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much. My name is Zulpa Atazieva, and I wanted to share some brief about the climate change and energy practices and policies in Kazakhstan. Yep. So, first of all, let's start from the fact that in our country, we already approved and established our strategy of carbon neutrality for 2060. And within this strategy, we are now developing the roadmap, and we will execute and perform various initiatives and projects to achieve our goals in renewable energy and other aspects. So if we talk about the power system of Kazakhstan, we can say that installed capacity of power plants is 24 gigawatts. Available power plant capacity is 20 gigawatts. Actual peak generation, including repairs, 15.1. And peak power consumption is 16. So we also can see on the slide that there are 3 zones. The western zone has no electrical connections with the northern and southern part. This diagram is demonstrating what is the composition of power system of Kazakhstan. And the dark part of the black part of the diagram demonstrating that Kazakhstan is highly dependent on the coal in electricity production nowadays. Anyways, renewable energy sources being developed within the time frame starting from 2009, when the first law of the Republic of Kazakhstan on support for the use of renewable energy source was signed. And today we, as I mentioned, reach the point of the maturity by strategy for achieving carbon neutrality by 2060. So we also want to say how gradually the part of renewable energy in total electricity production, the share, was achieved in a time frame. So in 2019, it was 23%, in 2020, it was 3%, and today we forecast that next year we will reach 6%, and according to our strategy to 2030, we want to reach 15%. So if you can see the renewable energy sources map could be quite positive and potentially available, because we have our wind resource areas and solar resource areas. But bear in mind that we have some grid connection complexities. We also want to say that in terms of renewable energy sources, that there are some results of the implementation of the auction mechanism. After introduction of an auction mechanism for selecting renewable energy projects in 2018, the auction price for wind decreased by 45%, while the solar price decreased by 64%. The minimum price for wind was 12 tenge for kilowatt per hour, which is 2.07 cents per kilowatt per hour, while the minimum price for solar was 9 tenge. So the power market in Kazakhstan and renewable generation in terawatts and share of renewables. If you can see, nowadays we actually have 5 and 6% of renewable energy in power generation, and within various programs, strategies for developing the renewable energy and clean energy in our country, we forecast to increase this number according to our strategy. So our conclusion that Kazakhstan power system is changing more rapidly than ever. So more than 3 gigawatt of new renewable generation connected during last 4 years to a system with a minimum load of 12 gigawatt. So additional 5 gigawatts of renewable energy sources will be connected in 5 years. Kazakhstan urgently needs least cost-effective flexible sources for power station. The modeling, studies, operation, and monitoring are all becoming more complex and resource intensive. importance of digitalization, data analytics, and capacity building increased. Solutions exist, but much more innovation and coordination is required to fully transition to carbon neutrality in a cost-effective and country-region specific way. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zulpat, for sharing these targets in renewables and carbon neutrality strategy overview. Now our last speaker, but not least for this sub-session, Dr. Bigjan Mukatov, who is an ADB regional staff consultant. He worked as a chief dispatcher and managing director of Kazakhstan's TSO, and under his supervision, advanced technologies like AGC was installed to national grid. Can we welcome Dr. Mukatov to the stage, please?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, dear forum participants. I'm pleased to present an overview of Kazakhstan's experience in enhancing the flexibility of power system. First, I want to mention that in Kazakhstan's national legislation has set requirements for stable operation of wind power plants depending on voltage level, permissible duration for stable operation of wind power plants during voltage drops in the electric grid have been established, and it means that wind power plants must continue to operate stably up to certain levels of voltage drop in receiving electric grid. These levels and permissible duration are shown on the first slide. Additionally, requirements for generation of reactive power based on actual generation of solar power plants have been formulated. Permissible frequency deviations, ranges, and durations have been determined within which renewable energy sources must continue to operate stably without disconnecting from the grid. For example, in the case for frequency deviation from 47 to 49 Hz, renewable energy power plants must continue to operate for 2 hours. For deviation from nominal frequency by 1 Hz, the operating time is unlimited. In the case of frequency increase from 1 to 1.5 Hz, stable operation for 1.5 hours is required. With the increasing share of renewable energy sources, Kazakhstan's power system faces problem with power balancing. For example, solar generation drops to zero in the evening hours during a peak power demand due to the decrease of generation and lack of other flexible generation. There is an increase of power flows from Russia. These flows are mostly unplanned and leading to various technical problems related to the risk of overloading of interstate transmission lines and internal lines in both Russia and Kazakhstan. In recent years, such deviations have exceeded 1,000 megawatt, while the permissible power deviation at the border between Russia and Kazakhstan is 150 megawatt. Another, I think, common problem for many power systems is a reduction of inertia with introduction of renewable energy. This slide shows the results of modeling electromechanical transient processes for west part of Kazakhstan power system. On the left is simulation without renewable energy, and on the right picture is a simulation with introduction of additional renewable sources in Kazakhstan. It's clear that under the same disturbance, the magnitude of rotor angle oscillations is greater than with the increased volume of renewable energy. And to enhance the reliability of Kazakhstan's power system, several projects have been implemented. One of them is the introduction of centralized emergency control system. One of them, before the introduction of this automated system, the settings of automatic systems were manually selected and controlled limited areas of power grid, leading to excessive impact on consumer power supply disruptions. With the new system, automatic system settings are made online, which increase the reliability of power systems and emergencies and minimizing customers' disconnections. Yeah. Another automatic system implemented in Kazakhstan is automatic generation control, AGC system. Before its introduction, the control of power plants generation to maintain balance and regulate frequency was carried out by dispatch personnel commands. After the introduction of the system, power flow regulation and frequency control are carried out automatically without human intervention. Yeah, next, also Kazakhstan power system includes a wide area measurement system, WAMS, based on synchronized phasor measurements, high discreteness phasor measurements, a low real-time situation assessment, and more accurate emergency control in abnormal situation. Regarding FACTS devices, Kazakhstan employs controlled shunt reactors, which allow smooth voltage regulation, especially on long transmission lines with variable power flows. The use of controlled shunt reactors has eliminated excessive switching operation and maintaining necessary voltage levels, enhancing stability and reducing losses. Yeah. Additionally, for forced power flow distribution on one of the long transmission lines in Kazakhstan, a phase shifting transformer is used, which allows increasing power flows on 500 kV lines and reducing flows on 220 kV lines. Yeah, in conclusion, I want to say that Kazakhstan has set ambitious goals to increase renewable in its power system, and at the same time, power system of Kazakhstan is experienced and challenged in maintaining power balance. And the implementing of automatic systems and FACTS devices help improve condition to integration of renewable energy in Kazakhstan power system. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for all speakers. Now I'd like to invite our speakers back on the stage and open up it in a question and answer from the audience. We have about 15 minutes until coffee break, and I would note to the preview of your break. Please, speakers, regarding the questions, please state your name, which country you are from, who your question is for, and your question. Just a minute, because just using my rights as a moderator, I have some questions quickly go through, and maybe we can then ask the audience also. My first question, Jacqueline, for you. Jacqueline, thanks again. Your research is always very informative, and I have personally used your slide about these flexibility supply options for the several presentations and discussions with you. So thank you very much. But these options depends on the country, and in our case, maybe it depends on the region also. And I think we need a kind of regional production cost model to compare the different options for flexibility. If I'm right, what would motivate decision makers in countries to start sharing the data and building such a model? Thank you.
That great question, and what a fantastic suggestion to have regional production cost models. The production cost model is really useful. Like if I was trying to talk a decision maker into creating one, I would focus on the value that that can bring. And namely, it's better reliability and lower costs for the customers in those countries. Because the production cost model can help you look at where are the vulnerabilities on the system, and especially if you're looking at it from a regional perspective, you know, if there's a cyber attack in one country, you know, how can things, how can the grid sort of recapture balance quickly? So that's the kind of thing that the production cost model could help provide. And ultimately, the goal for the decision makers is do what's best for the customers, you know, and that would help lower costs considerably.
Thank you. Next question to Mr. Shamsiv. Bakhtiyor, thank you very much for your presentation. You highlighted the main areas of cooperation, like power trading, reserve sharing, joint planning of integrated power systems. And as I remember, we have been discussing these topics years, maybe decades. And even here in ASF, several speakers also mentioned almost the same actions. And what do you see as the main challenges in moving from talk to action?
Nice question, because we are not at the beginning of the path. Countries have already begun to act act in many areas. Many stations are being built on the basis of public-private partnership, and this area is developing very quickly. This area. Note that it is necessary to shift the accent toward creating reserves capacity. For example, the constructing the mobile stations and storage devices. But newly introduced generating capacity will be locked up if we don't pay attention for our network construction. There are many bottlenecks in the power systems which should urgently need to address, and support from financial institutes is needed. I think many points was also in presentations, many steps, and we should increase our interconnection capacity, and of course to create some trading mechanisms. We already have trading between countries, but we should make the foreign rules, and it is one of the first steps for developing.
Okay, thank you very much. Alfredo, we see that there has been a comprehensive analysis on technical, financial aspects, but what is the biggest challenge for these kind of cross-border connections in general?
Thanks. Well, it's a pointy question. You can have everything right. You can do the technical analysis good. You can have good numbers financially, and you can have a good potential business there. But again, we are talking government-to-government relationships and geopolitics. And in some cases, some projects might not be great, not even economically feasible, but they are built because of diplomatic or political reasons, and vice versa. So I think one of the issues is that for this type of operations, there has to be a strong buyout and strong ownership by the two governments. And that's something that development banks put a lot of interest into getting that relationships going from our side as a multilateral organization. But again, everything has to be aligned. And it's not only the technical or the financial, but also the geopolitics have a big role to play on this.
Okay, it was I expected. Thank you, Zulpat. I'm glad to hear that Kazakhstan has clear targets in renewables and has this ambitious carbon neutral strategy with focus on renewables. And I hope that the integration costs and cost for the market and grid development also would be included in the implementation roadmap. But what is the main challenges could be in a way for the implementation of this carbon neutrality strategy?
Thank you so much for the question. To be honest, we always start discussion from understanding that capacity building nowadays is priority number one, but we shouldn't forget that capacity building in a context of one country doesn't really create much of the impact. That is why when we talk about the carbon neutrality strategy goals achievement, we need to make sure that we get a support and collaboration with other countries. So all our efforts should be, as we already discussed, it should be network connectivity, it should be geopolitical discussion, and etc. It's a lot of reliance on funding. When we develop different roadmaps and other programs, we need to make sure that we will be able to get finance for that. So as we already discussed it within a frame of JETP and just transition. We also need to make sure that there will be a lack of bureaucracy, because usually people are very talented, equipment can be there, but when the decision making is delayed or it's the quality is, when we say the decision quality, is impacted just because of the knowledge or information silos within the organizations, institutions, and etc., that breaks all our targets into like unachievable something. That is why the digitalization and data analytics, as we discussed, could play a huge role. We need to pay more attention to the transparency, and we need to focus on understanding that person and human should be in the center of our development, and using the other methodologies and frameworks, we can achieve some solid and impactful and meaningful and effective goals. And all of them are actually in the strategy. So this is what I think. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bigjan, you said that TSO in Kazakhstan has clear technical requirements for renewable energy sources. And these requirements are a little bit strict. For example, 47 hertz for 120 minutes for wind power plants. So how can TCO make sure that these requirements are met? And are there any verification activities to verify that the wind farm can continue operate with 47 hertz, 120 minutes?
Thank you very much, Eric. It's really, I think, interesting and useful question, because in Kazakhstan, as I know, in general, I think it's very difficult to create, I think, nature conditions in the real situation, because it's quite dangerous to allow the voltage level drop, and for frequency deviation, for example, for 3 GHz, it's very dangerous. Therefore, now in Kazakhstan, digital simulations is used to control settings. But at the same time, I think it's a really good opportunity to using this forum to share experience from another countries and power system in this issue. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Now, please, any questions from audience? Anna, please. Yeah, you can.
Perfect, thank you. Anyway, I have two quick questions. First to Jacqueline, thank you so much for a great presentation. And I'm Anna from UN ASCAP, and we work together with colleagues from ADB and other development institutions in Central Asia, among other countries. And as you may know, that in Central Asia, the tariffs are set quite low, below cost recovery, and the reasons for that, and to keep social security. And the reason why I'm bringing it up, because that's one of the mechanisms for liberalization of market and further development. And you have great experience from developed countries, and I would like to hear your experience and your views on how this issue could be resolved and to move forward. And the second quick question to Alfreda. Also, you know, the issue of data sharing in Central Asia and NAPSI region is quite crucial, and data transparency is not there, unfortunately. And the question is if ADB has any technical assistance program to facilitate data sharing mechanism in the region. Thank you.
Wait, don't go, because I didn't quite understand the question. So the question is about the low, customer tariffs?
Yes, customer tariffs, sorry for not being clear. Yes, because in Central Asia, it's in most countries, the tariffs are regulated.
Yeah.
And they are regulated on a very low level, which basically stops the development of power sector.
Yeah, and so I guess what is
the reason why government does not bring them up to avoid any social disturbances.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Central Asia is not the only one region where we have this. So the question is, do you have some examples from developed countries how this could be overcome?
I don't tend to focus on that question. I guess I would start with, that is a political question, and so I don't have a judgment on that one. If that's the priority, that I guess I would help focus on how could we reduce the cost just generally for the whole system so that the cost recovery isn't as great a gap. And I've certainly been in places where there's a lot of opportunity for more efficient operations on that. But yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have anything more on that topic.
Okay. So for the second question, in terms of data sharing, you're right. It's unfortunate some of this data is considered relatively sensitive and confidential in many of the countries. For our study, we also experienced some limited access to certain data, particularly from the buyer side of the NAPSI project. But that's why I mentioned the politics and the government ownership is so important, because the moment that both governments want to do it, they realize that they really need to start sharing. And that's the point, and that's the moment when you can start doing the actual detailed analysis. The current analysis that we can do, considering the access that we have to data, is a little bit limited, but still, we think, meaningful and can orient future strategies and next steps. But I agree that we need to keep pushing forward, and ADB and other multilaterals should keep trying to get engaged all these countries to share and to make that collaboration and cooperation more effective.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Herbert Lubis from Indonesia. My question is reliability and flexibility. Currently, the trend in the world, perhaps maybe in US, they are using generative artificial intelligence so that you can capture a situation. The first one is called like a contract, manual. Let's say you have a fire, explosion in your transmission, in your power, in your asset, then you can manage to store your database. And when crisis or incident happens, then you can, with the artificial intelligence, you can drill down your manual. You don't have to open the manual PDF or contract for 1 month or 6 months. But with the drill data, artificial intelligence, generative artificial intelligence, you can get the answer not in months, but in matter of minutes or hours. And then you can use also goggles for CCTV, that if something happened in the location of incident, you can make a report, real life situation, that you can monitor your asset immediately, including the power station, transmission line, as well as any other properties. And I don't know how you have this, ADB is working on toward the trend in the next future. And then secondly, whether you keep the data in the country or you keep it like in US cloud system. So if a cyber attack, the cloud or, can be very, what do you call, affected. But if you have the data inside the country, then you don't have to worry about this, cyber attack. The third one is, as I mentioned in the session today, that we have a local content requirements. If you open a factory like solar or wind in Indonesia, you have a local content requirement, let's say 60%. And then when you combine the intermittency variable renewable energy plus the factory for the what they call the battery, they will complement each other, meaning that we minimize export from other country, then we can create jobs in the local community, or what do you call that, green jobs. Last but not least, that's why when you talk about the generative artificial intelligence, Mr. Elon Musk came to our country last week, and then he opens this called Starlink. Starlink means you don't have to go to the marine cable. All you have to do the satellite, and then you can, capture the gigawatt, mega Mbps communication, including NVIDIA. NVIDIA will be opening the factory in Indonesia for GPU, not for CPU, for Gen artificial intelligence. My question is ADB is looking toward this, futuristic simulation? Thank you.
It's better if you already.
Yeah, I guess the question was for ADB, so I will try to tackle that one. So we have a team at the IT department that is working with AI, generative AI. I don't really know exactly what do they do. We have some apps that we are able to use for our own work, but for specific sectors like electricity, ADB is not, NREL is not, we are a bank, okay? We don't have that type of expertise to do in-house this type of work. And in terms of futuristic strategies and views, I must say that we are relatively conservative, like all financial institutions should be. So we should not jump at any new technology that comes out, even though I think we all can start agreeing that AI is going to be quite revolutionary. But ADB, so far, we are still working quite traditionally. That's as much as I can say, and I know about this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. We can continue this discussion during coffee break. Thank you very much. If any questions,
Yes.
last but short, please, because coffee break, we're already out of time. 5
Sure.
minutes. So
Yes, this will be short. We understand that in India you have, ancillary services market, right, getting involved and talking about, the market-based economic dispatch, SCED. In Central Asia, I think the market structures are still evolving in terms of the mechanisms, but everywhere we are talking about resource sharing, resource pooling. So that's the context. Now, I would like to learn, I would like to know from any of the panelists here, what are those three things, right? What is it that we can learn from, which market mechanism or market structure we can actually adapt in Central Asia and Asia for sure. Second, what kind of structure or mechanism we shouldn't be, kind of going for. So what has been a failure? And third is it needs to be tested. So if it'll be very useful to understand which market mechanism, just repeating the question, which market mechanisms has actually worked and should definitely be replicated. What is it that we should not go for? What has been a failure say in US, and that should not be adopted in other countries. And third is can't say, something that needs to be tested. So, yeah.
Jacqueline, maybe you can respond.
I'm not sure how to answer that on a general basis because so much of markets are about the values that are being prioritized within a market design. So I'm just trying to think of, I mean, all I can suggest is that the market designs are changing, especially, for example, resource adequacy. There's a lot of steps trying to be able to, right now we've got like capacity payments or capacity markets, but like as we're adding more renewables to the system, how can we make sure we're actually valuing the service for what it's going to be delivering? And it's just harder to measure that with some of these technologies. So I would look to sort of generally, like in the US, when we're looking for this kind of thing, the Energy Systems Integration Group, ESIG, is a good resource. They have a whole group of, they represent a lot of grid utilities and researchers and EPRI and others trying to figure out what the right market designs are. So that would be a good starting point for some of those questions.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you again to the speakers. Thank you to the audience for attending. We can discuss this, we can continue our discussion during coffee break. Please join us for the second sub-session, Dialogue with Champions. We will can explore the real world case, how we can improve the flexibility. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome everyone to this second session on flexibility and reliability in West Central and East Asia, the dialogue with champions. My name is Trond André Svanes. I usually go by Andre. I'm an energy specialist here at ADB, fairly new. I've been here in Manila for about 6 months. And it's been a long week, and we're really on the home stretch here. So I want to thank you for sticking it out and for joining us for this session. We have some very exciting speakers here for you. They say that one should learn from the best, and I believe that we have been very lucky to get some speakers from the most dynamic TSOs, from the most interconnected regions, and experts on the latest innovations in resilient infrastructure, storage, and smart solutions, enabling renewable energy transmission while maintaining reliability. And I notice now that I really should have made that more than one sentence. Together they represent an array of solutions to the challenges caused by intermittency. So without further ado, the first speaker has more than 15 years of experience within the energy sector. He's currently serving as a senior manager at Energinet, Denmark's TSO, where he oversees long-term planning of Energinet's infrastructure and the data assumptions. Mr. Henrik Gunnertoft Boysen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me for this event here in Manila. My name is Henrik Gunnertoft Boysen, as was mentioned, and I'm here to talk about energy transition in Denmark and in the Nordic region. And I'm very excited about the opportunity to be here today. And what I've already learned from being here is that although Denmark is on the other side of the globe, many of the challenges we are facing when it comes to green energy transition are the same in this region as it is in the Nordic region. As was mentioned, I work at the Danish TSO Energinet, where I'm heading the Department of Grid Planning and Sector Coupling, it's called. And Energinet is an independent company, but it's owned by the state. So whether we are an independent company or we are the state depends on the questions and who is asking. But I would like to presenting my 3 key messages just to make sure that they get across if you should forget everything else. And I think based on Danish experiences and Nordic experiences, I have 3 messages that I would like to get across with. And the first message I have is that 100% of green electricity is actually possible. Even with large shares of renewables, that is solar and wind, as is in the case in Denmark and the Nordic region, we are actually able to keep up the system. It works. As you all know, electrification is the main road towards electrification and decarbonization of our energy supply. To do this, fossil fuels, coal, oil, natural gas, we need to phase it out and replace it by greener alternatives. But it takes a lot of effort and dedication, and we're doing that for many years in the Nordic region. I think the green transition of the Danish power system took off approximately 15 years ago, and the most visionary people of the industry thought that maybe we could get a share of 20% of renewables in the system. That would be a maximum, and above that, it would not be able to handle that. And by now we have 70%, and we're going towards 0. So that's the first message I have. The second message I have is balance in the system is becoming increasingly important. It requires regional cooperation, it requires market integration, it requires digitalization to balance the system. And in the Danish situation, it's the Nordic countries, Norway, Sweden, and Finland, which are the major partners for us to balance the system. But we also work closely together with Germany, the Netherlands, and the UK. That was message 2. And then the third message I have here today is that strong energy infrastructure is a cornerstone, and what we call holistic planning is essential. We also need grid to get an effective balancing of the system. And we also need to plan for the long term, not just for 1 or 2 years. We have to look towards 2030, 2040, and 2050 to be able to do that. And as a TSO, if we fail to plan with adequate foresight, we risk being the bottleneck and limiting factor in clean energy transition. So the role we are working with as a TSO is very much also to build out the energy infrastructure. So that's my key messages. Now you can relax and forget everything else. But for those of you that are not familiar with Denmark and the Scandinavian part of the world, Denmark is here with the red arrow here. And a little more about Denmark. It's northern part of Europe, one of the Scandinavian countries, 6 million citizens, so it's a small country. And Copenhagen is the capital. Climate change is a major concern in Denmark. It's a political priority, and it's also something that the population as such is concerned about very much. And the government has defined quite ambitious climate goals. By 2030, we should be reduced by 70%, and by 2045, we should be climate neutral. So if you see the map here, we have gone from decentralized power production at the big thermal power plants to decentralized wind and solar power plants scattered across the country. After this brief introduction to Denmark, I'll go back to my first message, namely about clean energy that is actually possible. And just to show you one diagram, one figure here, what this diagram tells is that the Danish power production in total has dropped by 80%. The CO2 emission from the Danish power production has dropped by 80% since 2010. So it's only 20% of what it was in 2010. And this diagrams on the right side here It shows some trends of the Danish energy transition over the decades since the mid-1970s. And there have been some eras in the 1970s. The Danish energy consumption was heavily dependent on oil. And then we had the oil crisis, and we converted to coal and still oil. And then we start drilling oil and natural gas from the Danish part of the Northern Sea. And therefore, we used a lot of that in the 80s and 90s. And then from around year 2000, we started the green transition, and it really took off from 2010. So we have had these errors. And what you cannot see in the bottom here is, but that's very important, is that actually we can do this green transition without risking the security of supply. The security of supply is on 99.997, meaning that we have almost always power in the lines. Yeah, and at this moment, 70% of the electricity is from renewable resources, and 40% of the gas consumption in Denmark is from renewable biomethane. So, but to have a stable, this level of power supply and having it to be stable, we need to balance the intermittent power supply from solar panels and from wind farms. And this requires regional cooperation, as I mentioned early on, and regional market integration, and also digital solutions. So now we'll look into that. One of the challenges is that we have gone from what we could call a traditional upstream-downstream system to a much more complex system. In what you can call the good old days, before we got all the renewables into the system, the trick basically was to guess on how much power the consumers would use at any given time, and then produce this amount of electricity from the thermal power plants. So, so it was relatively easy. Now we look into a much more complex picture, and that's what you see here. On the production side, we have various production facilities, and on the consumer side, we also have what you can call prosumers. That means ordinary people that at some time they are consumers of electricity, and at other times they are producing to the grid, depending on the prices. I see the time is running, so I'll do it fast. What you can see here is this is a very central picture, and you can find it on the Energinet homepage, webpage, on the front page. In real time, you can see if we are importing electricity from other countries or we are not. And we have interconnectors from Norway and from Sweden and towards England, the UK, and to the Netherlands, and to Germany, and to Germany also from Zealand. And this is a snapshot from this Monday morning, or afternoon was it actually. And what you see there is that at this particular moment, we imported power from Norway, Sweden, and England, and then we exported to Germany and the Netherlands. And you see the capacities on the picture. So that's just a snapshot, and you can go to the Energinet webpage right now and see what will the picture, as we're speaking, what the picture is. And this is actually the same day, the last Monday. And what you can see here in the bottom of this graph, you can see the thermal power production, and then the green is the wind turbines. And at this time at the day, 5 o'clock in the morning, it was producing 4,424 megawatts of wind power production. But then it stopped blowing, and then you can see at 5 o'clock we had a surplus of power production exporting to other countries, But then from later on the day, we had to import electricity from a neighboring country through the interconnectors. So this is a practical way to see how we are balancing the system through interconnectors. And this is another picture. I think this is a historical moment. I think it's the day where we had the largest surplus of renewables in Denmark. It was May 15th this year. It was a very windy and a very sunny spring day. So we had quite a big surplus of in total 2,500 megawatts exporting to our neighboring countries. And the last picture here is just to show that it can go up and down, and we have to balance the system from minute to minute and hour to hour. And to do that, we need market and flexibility. This is a picture of how the Nordic wholesale market works. I won't go into the details; it will be too complicated for this moment. But basically, we had this question early on: what about the prices and the tariffs? And I think it's very important actually to get the prices of the various producers and the various production technologies up to the surface, so that the consumers and the producers, they will be met with the actual price. Then if you think the prices are too high, then you need to subsidize maybe the production behind the actual price signals for producing. And at the same time, when digitalization is a very key and important thing, you have in the Nordic region, we have digital meters that is remotely readable, and we have a data hub so we can exchange data. Then as a strong infrastructure is also important in order to balance the system. And both in the shorter term and in the long term, as I mentioned, if we are not planning ahead, then we as a TSO will become a bottleneck in our ability to actually be able to balance the system. And we need to prepare for tomorrow, because the figures I showed, or the diagrams I showed before, was for Denmark on a national level, but of course the production is scattered and the consumption is scattered all around the country. So we have this need for transportation between consumption and production all the time. And what we do in Denmark is that we get the political ambitions on what will the climate goals be. Then we analyze this and decompose this and find out what does it mean in terms of need of grid reinforcement, and then we plan for that. And we have just presented, or will do this week, a new plan towards 2050. And what it shows is that the green power production will raise dramatically from now on towards 2050, and the same will be the case with the power consumption. So we need to plan for that. And now we're talking about flexibility, and one thing we are also working with alongside a well-functioning wholesale market is if we can place production and consumption behind the meter, so to speak, so we don't have to put the electricity out on the grid. So we're talking about direct lines not being owned by the transmission operator or the distribution operator, but by third parties. And behind those lines, they can produce and consume without putting out on the public grid. And we're also talking about what we call overplanting, and this is especially relevant when we talk about a future hydrogen production. And we are talking about Energy Island in the North Sea region, and there we expect there to be a higher electricity production capacity than what will be connected to the grid, and the overcapacity will be used for hydrogen production. Yes, So this was a very brief introduction to the Nordic region and Nordic market from a Danish perspective. And just to recap my messages, 100% clean energy, clean electricity is possible, and balancing the system is becoming increasingly important, and we also need a strong infrastructure.
Thank you very much, Henrik, for that valuable insight. We're quickly going to go on to our next speaker, who's a senior manager of South Korean TSO, KEPCO, where he has led numerous projects focused on enhancing grid reliability and operational efficiency through numerous projects for through applications of advanced technologies. He oversees the development and implementation of cutting-edge systems, and his work has significantly contributed to KEPCO's reputation as a leader in sustainable energy management. Mr. Gilmo Yang, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I am Gilmo Yang, Senior Manager of KEPCO, Korea Electric Power Corporation. It's an honor to introduce you, KEPCO, and our technology. Okay, let me introduce KEPCO briefly. KEPCO is the largest government-owned power company in Korea. As of 2023, KEPCO's total assets were about 182 billion, and revenue were about 55 billion. In addition, KEPCO is responsible for 100% of transmission and distribution network in Korea and 61.5% of power generation through our 6 subsidiaries. We also have affiliates specialized in power plant engineering and ICT maintenance. KEPCO, the Korea power industry, is broadly divided into 4 main stages, which are power generation, transmission, distribution, and sales. Our subsidiaries and independent power producer generate power with various energy sources such as nuclear, hydro, thermal, and renewables. At the transmission and distribution level, KEPCO is a single utility. We own, operate, and manage the entire T&D network in South Korea and sell electricity to customers as a dominant market player. As you can see on the screen, we have 9.7 million units of electric poles, 129 gigawatt transformer capacity, and 514,000 circuit kilometer of line lengths. This represents a significant increase compared to 1961. Okay. KEPCO's transmission and distribution efficiency is known to be among the best in the world. As you can see in the graph below, SciFi that represent power outage per household in 2020 marked 8.61 minutes per year. And the T&D loss rate was 3.53%. Let me introduce the asset management of KEPCO. First, I'd like to talk about the background of introducing the asset management system. In advanced countries that began industrialization, there has been a rapid increase in maintenance costs and budget shortages due to the aging of industrial facilities and social infrastructure facilities. As a result, the concept of asset management emerged to assess the adequacy of equipment investment. KEPCO is currently between the 3rd and fourth generation. As the third generation management, various diagnoses such as ultrasonic diagnosis, thermal imaging diagnosis, and partial discharge diagnosis are being conducted to assess the current condition of power facilities. As the fourth generation management, after 5 years of development, we have been operating the KEPCO asset management system since last year. Now it is on the test operation and will be used in all our branch office nationwide, starting in 2026. Let me briefly introduce of our third generation condition-based management. KEPCO has been conducting scientific diagnosis since 2000. We perform optical diagnosis, thermal imaging diagnosis, very low frequency diagnosis, and more. Starting in 2022, diagnostic technology has been advanced. Cameras installed on vehicles automatically recognize, record, and analyze equipment using artificial intelligence. It diagnoses the condition of the equipment very quickly and accurately. Okay. Coming back to the main idea, the KEPCO asset management system evaluates the probability of failure and the ripple effect caused by failure based on big data. Also, it provides the replacement priority of the equipment. The current applicable equipment includes transformers and switches in the transmission and distribution field. The third generation management consider only the current status of the equipment to determine whether to replace it or not. But the fourth generation management consider not only the current status of the equipment, but also risk and cost. I will explain this on the next page. Okay, this is the data flow. Diagnosis data and fault data and load data are generated from facilities and smart meters as raw data. This data is collected to the AMS database and cleaned according to various criteria. Finally, the cleaned data is applied into the AMS system. The AMS system analyzes the fault probability and impact of fault. The fault probability model calculates the remaining life of the facility using 3 components. The first component is that status remaining life, which is calculated from third generation diagnosis. And second, second is statistical remaining life calculated from specific manufacturers' failure big data. And third, operational remaining life calculated from smart meters load data. The consequence of failure model calculate cost such as financial cost and safety cost due to failure. And finally, you can get the optimal replacement priority of the specific facilities such as transformers in Seoul. Okay. Next is utilization. We can utilize the AMS data in various ways, from executive level to operation manager from branch offices. This data can be used for budget allocation data and equipment operation plans and more. And furthermore, as the data continues to accumulate on the big data platform, more accurate prediction will be possible. Let me introduce brief KEPCO's big data platform. KEPCO operates 261 individual systems, including AMS. The data from these 261 systems is collected on the KEPCO Big Data platform, which can overcome the side effect between systems. Users can analyze data from all systems in one place. By using this analysis result, we can save capital expenditure and operational expenditure, and we can supply more reliable power to our customer. Next, let me introduce the distribution automation system, which is the previous version of the DMS, which will be introduced by the next speaker. DAS is a sophisticated system designed to automate the monitoring, control, and management of the distribution network. Its primary goal is to enhance the efficiency and reliability of power in distribution. Also, it can ensure a stable and uninterrupted supply of electricity to our customers. DAS consists of switches, FRTUs, and communication network, and the distribution control center. All the DAS data are stored and used through our own closed-loop server. The human-machine interface is a computer system that interconnects between human and machines through a graphic user interface. It displays information obtained from switches and transmits operators' command to the FRTUs. The FRTU check the status of field switches and send information to the server through a modem. Operators then send command signals and control FRTU through the modem. With the instruction signal sent to the FRTU, it controls the switch. Okay. In the field, switches and circuit breakers operate the distribution network by opening and closing to directly manage the power supply. To enable remote control of these devices using the DAS system, we have developed and installed feeder remote terminal unit. FRTUs not only control the opening and closing of the switches, but also collect measurement data such as voltage and current. They play a crucial role in detecting the fault current and notifying users through fault indicators. Okay. DAS employs sensors and smart meters to continuously monitor the distribution network. It allows for real-time detection of issues, and operators can manage the networks 24 from the distribution control center. With the DCC, we can monitor distribution lines in real time and manage them stably. In the event of emergency like a power outage, the fault section can be quickly separated from the network, and the unaffected section can be recovered immediately through the remote control of switches. Okay, this is the last page of my presentation. Let me explain the procedure of power outage recovery. When the power outage occurs, DCC will recognize it immediately. Then DCC operator will separate the fault section and recover power to the sound section. And after that, DCC operator will let the service center know the fault section. Then service center's workers will go to the fault section and find the exact location and reason for the power outage. They will fix the problem and let DCC know after they complete fixing it. then DCC will recover power to all sections. Okay. This is what I have prepared for you today. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yang. Our next speaker, a power systems and smart grids expert whose extensive expertise encompasses the planning, design, and implementation of sophisticated smart grid systems and digitalization projects. He played a leading role in supporting the technical guidance in the power system master plans for Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Kyrgyzstan, and has created notable international impact. Mr. Gökhan Tosun, the floor is yours.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you so much for your participation. Well, I have certain different hats as a consultant in different international projects. Sometimes I'm a power system planner, long-term planner. Sometimes I'm a smart grid expert. Sometimes I'm a power system operations and dispatch center expert. For this specific session, I was requested to more concentrate on the smart grids, which is kind of an enabler and catalyzer for what we have been discussing about power system flexibility and reliability. So I will just quickly go through what smart grids are, what drives smart grids indeed. We have certain mega trends in terms of decentralization of the generation, digitalization, and also change of operational philosophies. New technologies are like entering into the systems, which brings in the need for the transformation, not only in the primary systems, I mean, not only in the copper and aluminum in the field, but also in the technologies on the information and communication technologies, operational technologies, and also the respective business models and products that are to be served for the market. So I have just put a smart grid definition. As an engineer, I have used an integral formula. And for the components that we can mention about the smart grids, here are certain technologies that we can mention about. We will be touching some of them in line with their support to the power system reliability and flexibility, but indeed any kind of automation system, either in the field or in the control centers, they are at the core of our reliability. On the other side, all sort of analytics functionalities that help us predict the intermittency of the renewable, how to manage the existing storage, existing flexibility, existing dispatchable generation, they are all as part of the flexibility catalyzers for our power system operations. Well, first of all, I would like to just mention about the reliability part, which is on the, first of all, the monitoring and control. Like it can be very basic telemetry and it can be very advanced self-healing networks. So there is a different range that the different companies implement in our projects. And this is also coupled with the the analytical insight that different systems, including EMS, ADMS, outage management system, these are supporting the utilities for further reliability improvement in their systems. Definitely, we have the AMI for situational awareness and other telemetry systems, sensors for us to get more informed about what is happening in our networks for reliability purposes. And there are other advanced systems that will helping us what is the root cause of our problems in terms of reliability. And also another major concept, which is the next step of the reliability, is resilience, how to get prepared to disaster scenarios and also large scale events is another benefits of the smart grids. And also we can mention about this asset management. Our colleague from KEPCO has shown a good proactive asset management approach that has been presented earlier. So these are mainly the reliability topics. On the flexibility side, I have a different categorization. We are talking about the power flexibility, energy flexibility. These two are fine. And I have also added the transfer capacity flexibility and some kind of voltage flexibility into the definitions. And I wanted to just show that what kind of different resources are more eligible or more favorable to support these different flexibility resources. So these are like some highlights from the available solutions. Well, smart grids, what does smart grids do? I have just put like 10 items here as potential use cases that smart grids can help for the flexibility of the system. And I have put the 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1 is power flexibility, 2, energy flexibility, 3, transfer capacity, and 4, voltage, let's say, flexibility. Each of them has impact on different, let's say, flexibility resources. So first of all, we have mentioned about the real-time monitoring and control. So this is including the control of the grid elements as well as the control of certain generators that will provide the flexibility. So this can start with like basic monitoring to advanced decision making using these systems. Secondly, like the modernization of the controllers of both the existing conventional generations and also the renewable generations to give much more better support to the grid services is another like contribution of smart grids. So there are lots of advanced controllers that we use in such systems. Third one, I think that has been mentioned a few times, like the energy forecasting, both on the demand side and also the renewable side. The short-term energy forecasting is very key for improved flexibility. And as the fourth item here, we can mention about the dynamic line rating, dynamic equipment rating as another enabler for transfer capacity flexibility. Well, our colleague from Kazakhstan has mentioned about the FACTS. So FACTS is like based on lots of power electronics devices in certain cases and controllers, which is another contribution of smart grids to the power system flexibility. And when we talk about the smart grids, I think majority of us is just thinking about the distributed resources as well, not only the transmission scale. So this is where smart grids will probably have the game changer, like having the thousands, sometimes 100,000 of points to be managed without any automated system will be not so possible. So we can mention about the coordinated distributed energy resource management, and also to a certain extent virtual power plant management, which smart grids can enable. And definitely the demand response, especially in the scale of grids, can be like integrated into our flexibility portfolio using the smart grids. And power storage and demand response, they are like being catalyzed by the smart grid solutions that this ecosystem brings. Definitely last but not least is the sector coupling. So the multi-purpose energy infrastructure, managing them properly to optimize the use of the infrastructure will definitely require the smart grid solutions that we mentioned. So I just also wanted to add another key item. Maybe it's not directly about smart grids, but the systems that is used for the long-term planning can be considered as part of these IT systems and OT systems. So I have been seeing lots of long-term plannings which are concentrating on the resource adequacy and also the grid capacity adequacy, which, let's say, in most of the cases lacking any assessment in terms of the flexibility adequacy, especially in this part of the world. So that's one of the key aspects to have a clear visibility about the ramping resources that we have in the system, so that the long-term planning can be, let's say, coupled with the strategical targets that each country has. So I just wanted to present certain use cases, but before, I have developed this presentation before all parties or speakers were fixed. So I have one Denmark and one South Korea cases, which I will just skip. So it's good that, like, as a consultant, I converge to the same best practices as the ADB team. So for Denmark, what was like key or like charming me is the use of advanced solutions on the dispatch operations, starting inclusion of the DERs in the ancillary services. So these were the two key aspects. And for Korea, you already listened from our colleague in terms of the advanced automation and advanced asset management technologies. So I'm not going to go in deep for those. So Turkey, which the country I come from, is an interesting case. So there is already 25 gigawatt of renewable that is connected to the system. 12 gigawatt of it is solar, all embedded to distribution. And the country's both transmission and distribution is not well, let's say, beyond any peer countries in terms of digitalization. So they're not so good. Indeed, there are a few key aspects that has been implemented. So one of them is definitely the monitoring systems, wind monitoring, solar, let's say, measurement, and also short-term forecasting. So this was the only thing that the transmission company has properly implemented, which allowed them to manage the growing, let's say, intermittent energy in the system. Definitely, Turkey has some certain hydro resources as well as interconnected to ENSOI, which are also another aspects of flexibility, but still the problems that has been appearing like 5 years ago now diminished after implementation of these proper forecasting systems as a key message. So I was going to mention about a few points in terms of the demand response and virtual power plant use cases. So one use case from California for a 50 megawatt of virtual power plant as a source of flexibility, which is triggered by this signal from the market. And another use case from Baltimore, it was another demand response program, especially concentrating on the EV, electric vehicles, and also the charging stations. So these are in general used to be in only the pilot stage, but now it started to become utility scale more and more, especially in the US. And I have also wanted to mention about the participation of the wind and solar power plants in ancillary services, like different countries has already introduced these into their grid codes and their practices, which can be an important step to the Asian countries as well. And I just as the final, let's say, stuff, I have put here 6 stages of the RES integration, how it, let's say, how much it's integrated versus what the countries should be doing. So I think most of the, let's say, Central Asia countries is between phase 2 and phase 3. So they already started to increase the flexibility resources and also seek for other options. Indeed, there are certain robust plans in terms of what to do, how much storage, how much additional dispatchable generation, etc. But what we are saying is that in accompanying with these plans, there should be the technology roadmaps as well that should be properly implemented in order to be able to have these, let's say, working in the required manner and even sometimes better than expected. My last slide is about the final recommendations. The monitoring of the grid and the renewables is essential, as well as certain automation to be implemented. That is generally missing part. The second part, the adaptive operational strategies, like active network management, manage the inverters of those solar power plants, manage the distribution interfaces. So these kind of different operational strategies should be adapted. As a third item, that's generally misleading in terms of reliability. For example, KEPCO has mentioned about 8 minutes of SAIDI, but let's say in many countries, we have 100 hours of SAIDI. So can you imagine the gap? So the countries should be first identify what is my target in terms of the service quality, so that the amount of money and automation and technologies that we will implement will very much depend on that. So that's another key issue. We already mentioned about the wind and solar power plants participation to ancillary services to also, let's say, support the flexibility. Long-term planning, we already mentioned. And last but not least, for certain new technologies like the demand response and also the virtual power plants, it's good to start with the pilots. So that's another key message for Central Asia power system as next stages. So thank you very much for your listening.
Thank you very much, Gohan. Moving on to our next speaker, quite fitting with your last comments on ancillary services. Hans is a senior executive who's held several positions in long-duration energy storage technology companies, paving the way for these solutions through market development for storage solutions in both the US and in Europe. Mr. Hans Mikael Svanbom, the floor is yours.
Okay, I hope you're still awake now. We are in the final round here to finalize, but I'm really happy to be here, and I would like to thank ADB, Andre and Cedric for the opportunity to come here to speak. I think the topic is very well suited here because we're here to try to decarbonize, and many people have said that storage is the holy grail to be able to deploy renewable energy in the grids and outside the grid also. So I will take you through a couple of projects that has been executed and can actually be deployed in your region as well, and I will go through them. So long duration energy storage, and this yeah, I have a little button here. It started, I think, 4 or 5 years ago with some ideas about network planners that understood that there is actually a need for storage to be able to have grid stability. And that then long duration energy storage were created, and there is a lot of different technologies in there, but I will only address 2 of them. So we know that this is something that is very important to be able to balance the grids. And we have heard during basically the whole week now that the importance that to have storage in the different solutions. And so when we see what is actually happening here now, and last year, we only had 1% of the total investment in the storage. And that also relates a little bit, where are we in the phases and where are we in the different parts of the world and regions in terms of the energy mix in the different networks. But it is clear that investment in renewables must be met by investment in storage. And the grid capacity and reliability depends on that. So looking into then long duration energy storage, what kind of technologies we have? We have mechanical, they are grouped in 4 different things. So it's mechanical, thermal, chemical, and electrochemical. Very known to most energy producer in the world is that the pump hydro. We have had that for many years. So in different countries we have up to 95% of the capacity of long duration energy storage is really in the pump hydro. But the limitations is also now very high capital cost to implement new ones, and you have to think about things like 80 years of new installation that should be running there. And you also have a limitation on geographical sites, because you need to have, you have a geographical limitation because you need a deposit on a high level, and you need another one on a low level. But I will talk to you about 2 projects today that is novel projects. One is liquid CO2, and the other one is in thermal, that is using molten salt as a storage media. So the first case study here is that it's industrial heat decarbonization. the first day here, I saw their report on REN 21, and if you look at what we need to decarbonize, it was approximately 40% is industrial heat that needs to be carbonized, and also depending on the country, then you have like 25-30% is the electrical grid, which we also know that will need to be double or triplicated the capacity. So this is a system that is what they call plug and play. There is no EPC needed. It's called Heatcube, and it's prefabricated and delivered then for a very easy installation, you would say. It has a low footprint and high energy density. It's minimal space and can easily be installed in existing process plants. One of the very good advantages with this system is that they can charge and discharge simultaneously. So that will allow for a maximum benefit from the electricity market perspective. Interesting thing about this is actually installed in Denmark as well. So we have another connection here with the Nordic countries. So, and the round trip efficiency is about 93%. And using also IE intelligence connected to this, the round trip efficiency can go up beyond the 93%. So what it does is actually, I mean, I cannot go in very long or deep in detail to it. So I would just say that you use renewable energy as electricity for a heater. You heat molten salt and you produce steam. And in this case, the application for the Heatcube is actually a district heating system. So many district heatings have been using coal or oil as a heating medium before, but to actually decarbonize this, then you have to use renewable energy, and then you use the Heatcube, and you store it in the molten salt, and then you produce the steam to it then. And this Heatcube is installed in Aalborg Forsyning, it's called. And apart from running it for district heating, they also certified this as flexible asset by the Danish TSO. So it actually has two advantages in that sense. And I can say that they had a pilot project that was installed. Now they have the commercial project here, and there are 4 or 5 other projects under construction. Next case study is really a storage that is capable of doing a lot of grid services that also helps to stabilize the network, apart from the energy shifting. So this is a round trip efficiency of 75% that I have. This is very, very high when you talk about the storage and electricity. It's very cost effective. The CO2 batteries can be constructed anywhere in the world. It's a megawatt scale plant, so it's good for grid connections and I would say utility scale. It's durable because this is a project that you can calculate on 30 years lifetime. It's reliable, it's off-the-shelf components made by eco-friendly materials, and it's not depending on any rare metals such as lithium, for instance. It's a manipulation with CO2 between gas and liquid phases. We will see a picture on that one later on. So it takes the CO2 and they put it into through compressors and turbines that put it into a liquid state. It's energy storage and they have a sweet spot between 8 to 24 hours. There's no CO2 emissions in the atmosphere because it's all contained in a dome. No cryogenic temperatures and high costs that are typically associated with compressed air energy. So they have also patented, of course, all their processes and the details in this process. The company, as you see, it's called Energy Dome, and they are coming from Italy. So the case study here is also from Italy. It's Sardinia. Sorry, Sardinia. They have 2 plants in Sardinia. One was the pilot, and then they have the commercial one. The size is actually 20 megawatt power and 200 megawatt hours then. And the storage duration is 10 hours. So it's a truly LDES technology there. The commercial operations will start end of 2024. The capex is approximately 50 million euros, and it was funded from the European Investment Bank and Breakthrough Energy. And here we can see the services. I saw that in the I mean the network and the smart grid. You have several of these. So of course the main thing is the energy shifting. We're shifting energy from the day to the night, and we can cover 10 hours during the night. And then you have the physical inertia, which is in many cases when you decarbonize and you take away coal plants or natural gas plants where you run turbines, you have inertia. But then you create, if you take that away, a certain instability in the networks. But using this one, you can reinstall these type of services. And also the frequency and containment reserve, etc., and all those services that you can get from this. And the voltage regulation as well. So that was my presentation. So I really hope that these examples could help this region to see that there is solutions to actually go in and increase the renewable mix in the networks, even if you don't go to 100% directly as the Danish one. But during this stepwise approach, you have possibilities to implement these technologies step by step. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Hans. It's no secret that I'm a big fan of long duration energy storage myself. So last but not least, our final speaker is Ms. Sangchun Yun. Ms. Yun is a manager at KEPCO and will share with us KEPCO's experience in renewable energy integration. The floor is yours.
Thank you for sparing time from your busy schedule. Before we go any further, please allow me to introduce myself. I'm Sangcho Yoon, the manager at Korea Electric Power Corporation, KEPCO. It's an honor to be here to acquaint you with our technological advancements. But enough about me. Today, our focus lies in discussing how KEPCO integrates renewable energy through efficient grid management. Let's start with an overview of distributed energy resources in Korea. DERs refers to small-scale units of local generation connected to the grid at the distribution level. These includes solar panels, wind turbines, and other renewable sources contributing to our energy mix. In Korea, photovoltaic systems dominate the DER landscape, accounting for 81% of the total capacity. The majority of these resources are concentrated in Jeolla and Gyeongsang regions. So our data shows a steady increase in DER capacity over the years, mirroring the growing adoption of renewable energy. As the number of small-sized DER units rises, so does the total DER count, showing exponentially growth. The interconnection landscape varies depending on the region and the type of DER being integrated. Different regions may have requirements and processes for DER grid interconnections. Grid codes are established to ensure that DER integration upholds grid stability and reliability, covering aspects like voltage regulation, power factor, anti-islanding, harmonics, and flicker and protection measures. Primary checks involve ensuring that the total nominal power of all DERs connected to the transformer stays within a certain threshold, often set at 50% of the transformer's nominal power. This safeguards against overloads, which could lead to voltage and frequency fluctuations. Decisions regarding the approval and configurations of DER interconnection are based on thorough evaluation of these conditions, whether they are shared among multiple DERs or dedicated to specific installation. Similar to low voltage interconnection, the total aggregate power of all connected DERs is evaluated against the operating limit of the shared feeder at minimum voltage level. Assessments also consider the potential impact of DER connections on circuit breaker operation and system short circuit capacity. These includes evaluating whether the existing circuit breakers are capable of handling the additional load from DERs, and whether the system's short circuit capacity is sufficient to withstand any potential faults or abnormal conditions. To address interconnection issues, we have implemented solutions for voltage rise and capacity constraints. One common issue with DER interconnection is voltage rise. To tackle interconnection challenges, KEPCO is spearheading the introduction of smart inverters. These inverters actively respond to system crises such as voltage and frequency fluctuations. And linking to advanced distribution management systems, it ensures remote power quality control for distribute line. Furthermore, to address capacity constraints, we are implementing energy storage systems offering alternatives to traditional system extension and enhancing power quality. Frequency regulation, ESS, rapidly adjusts supply and demand balance on the grid to stabilize the grid frequency, ensuring that it remains within acceptable limits. Distribution ESS can be used to flatten peaks in electricity demand, especially during periods of high consumptions. By storing excess energy during off-peak hours and discharging it during peak times, it helps reduce strain on the distribution in infrastructure. It can optimize its capacity and minimize the need for costly upgrades. And electricity storage vehicles and portable ESS also serve as mobile energy storage units, providing backup power during emergencies and supporting temporary events. Additionally, transformer-linked compact ESS in KEPCO installed near distribution transformers offer localized energy storage and grid support capabilities. Next, the DER management system integrates and manages DERs comprehensively. We called it DUMS. The DUMS covers technical reviews, real-time monitoring and control, voltage management, and system optimizations. The DUMS aims to provide an integrated solution for a series of operations related to overall system management. It based on the integrated management function of DER monitoring and controlling. I'd like to explain the parameter determination of voltage regulator. PDVR is a program designed to calculate optimal parameters for voltage regulating devices such as OLTC, SVR, ESS, etc. They can ensure stable voltage operation in the distribution system. Traditionally, each SVR or ESS adjusts voltage based on their own value at their respective location. However, with PDVRs, all voltage regulation devices across the entire distribution line can operate together. And distribution network reconfiguration enables system operator to optimize network configuration, minimizing losses, equalizing loads, and relieving voltage and overload issues. With DNR, a system operator can reconfigure the network by changing the normally open points that connect different distribution lines. Generation estimation is a function that estimates the current output of DERs, either to not have measurement devices installed or cannot be properly monitored due to communication issues. Based on the generation output of measured plants, it calculates an appropriate generation rate to determine the output of unmeasured plants. The estimated generation data is stored by line and switchgear section, and it is used by system operator for technical reviews and operational purposes. Next, DER connection analysis supports the seamless integration of new DERs into the distribution network by conducting automatic technical reviews. The program automatically reviews whether the connection of the DER under specific conditions affects voltage, capacity, and the malfunction of protection devices. The web dashboard provides a comprehensive view of DER information, adding system operation with real-time updates and GIS-based location tracking. Based on GIS, the location and information of DERs by line can be checked, and it displays real-time status such as the capacity of connectable DERs, load and generation, voltage, and line capacity. Now, inverter output control regulates solar power plants' output, known as curtailment. ensuring grid stability and demanding supply balance. It is essential for maintaining grid stability and optimizing performance through advanced inverter control system. First, we schedule to achieve daily reduction targets required by KPX, and then operators can optimize grid performance by setting priorities for different DERs. Inverter control adjusts power generation output, preventing grid overloads and maintaining voltage stability. Through this function, solar inverters can be started and stopped, and the upper limit of the output can be set to restrict the power output. I hope today's presentation has helped you understand KEPCO's technological advancements and efforts in renewable energy integration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Yoon. And can I please invite all the speakers up to the stage, and we can have a bit of a panel discussion, and hopefully some questions from the audience as well. It kind of reminds me a bit of Marines Hell Week in here. We started out about 600 people, you know, 3-4 days ago, and only the most resilient are left in this room right now, so we very much appreciate it. Very, very good. So I prepared some questions, but I see for the sake of time, I'm probably not going to reach all the way through them. So I'm just going to pick a few and then ask you in the audience to come with your questions. I want to start out with Henrik, and I'll give the exact same question to KEPCO after. Henrik, you gave us very good insight into what Denmark has done to enable intermittent renewables while maintaining reliability. There are clearly differences, such as energy mix drivers of demand and more, but what do you identify to be the similarities between Denmark and the regions in question today? And where can your experience directly inspire the solutions for this region going forward?
Thank you for the question. I think in many ways, I think the challenges are the same because the technology behind is the same. So I think in many ways we can learn from each other, and so I think that's the main point. When it comes to renewables, solar, wind, etc., it has the same profile in Denmark as it has in this region. And we have to integrate the renewables in the system in the most efficient manner and the most effective manner. And I think one important point is to see how the price signals can get up to the surface in order for the producers to get the signal to know when they should produce and when they should not produce, especially for the thermal power plants based on coal and oil. But also to the consumers, so they know when they can shut down their consumption and when they can scale up the consumption based on the prices. I think that a universal lecture that everybody should learn from. And then of course you have the difficulty with the prices, and maybe people, they don't have the money to pay for electricity. And I think there you have to look how you can subsidize in other ways. That is what we have been doing in Denmark also, even though it's a wealthy country. A lot of things has been subsidized behind the scenes, but in a way that respects the market and the price structure.
Very good. Thank you so much, Henrik. And I don't know, Ms. Yoon or Mr. Yang, would you want to answer as well? I guess obviously in the East, you obviously have already a lot of this similar to Denmark, very good integration of intermittent renewables, but could you give similar, I guess, identification of similarities that could help West and Central Asia going forward?
Should I pick? Mission? No problem. I can move on. No problem. Then I can ask a quick question more for Henrik. Denmark's been rolling out wind power for decades already. And what do you think is the most, if you had to choose one, what would be the most valuable lesson learned that the countries in this region should keep in mind to prevent unnecessary spending or challenges going forward? And just to rephrase that a little, I guess what I'm asking is, what is Denmark's most expensive lesson learned?
I think, yeah, Denmark has wanted to be a front runner in developing wind power, and it's always expensive to be the first and be the front runner. And I think people in Denmark criticizing the Danish bet on wind power, they have said that if we had spent the same money in developing the banana production in Denmark, then we would be the world-leading banana producing country. So in all the way the Danish state has invested in wind power production. So, but then we have developed the wind power production. So, but I think you don't have to be the front runner. You can use the technology that is already being developed. And then I think another lesson is don't try to save what should not be saved. I think in Denmark for many years the thermal power plants they were afraid of the business, and they got subsidies for changing to biomass. So we bought biomass from all over the world, heavily subsidized. I think that was a mistake. Instead, you should have gone directly to more renewables from beginning of, instead of using biomass that might not be that sustainable when at the end of the day. So I think that is another lesson learned. Go directly towards what you want to use.
Thank you so much. Is that a question that you might want to chime in on? Is that something that you would like to comment on, a lesson learned from your Cape Cod lesson learned from South Korea?
Okay. Actually, I talked about the AMS, asset management system, and actually we are proud of our algorithm for prediction, but the most important thing is the data. It's cleaned data, because we are depending on the data with manual input, but manual means a human, so there inevitably has errors. So we are planning to deploy the hundreds of IoT into our facilities to automatically obtain the data. Yeah, that's our plans to have the pure, clean data.
Very good. Thank you so much. I actually had a question about the ADMS. I saw you recently had an MOU with Kyrgyzstan on some new energy business there.
ADMS? Okay.
Correct. Yeah. But you sort of answered what I was going to ask, so that was very good. Thank you so much. Can I ask you very quick, Hans? I think it's very intriguing to hear about the commercialization of these new long-duration energy storage technologies, and I think they have huge potential, and both in terms of flexibility, but also in decarbonizing energy-intensive industries, and even for things like district heating, as you saw from the Denmark example. But so if you were to gaze into a crystal ball for a minute, where do you see these technologies in 10 years from now? And what are their applications and impacts likely to be once they mature, sort of past TRL 7 and into a properly commercialized solution?
Yeah, thank you for that question. The other ones are looking into a crystal ball. That's not easy. But what I can say is that, I mean, it's it's about novel technology, and novel technology is of course, and not all of them will survive, but hopefully many of them will come to a commercial stage, and where you can see that you can actually drive down cost. Because if you look at the estimations to be successful in storage, and also in the power, renewable power production at the end. And so we started off with the solar, and solar prices they went down. So now it's really affordable. It's cheap renewable energy now, probably the cheapest of all. So wind and solar is cheap. But since we have this issue with the grid stability, etc., we have to combine it with storage. And so when you combine it with storage, you have a different cost mass. So the storage also has to go down. And those technologies, they are capable of driving down the cost, as well as we have seen in solar. When you do that combination, then it will take off. And exactly what kind of a technology that would be, yeah, that's a crystal ball. But you saw some of the examples today where those companies has been successful at taking their technology into commercial products. That means that they are economically viable on the market right now. And so I hope there will be a number of others as well. They are, I mean, flow batteries, for instance, there are some companies as well that are successful at deploying. So it's coming more and more, I would say.
Thank you so much. Gohan, you talked a little bit about it, but I would love to get a little more insight into your thoughts on what would you say are the most common challenges you observe in implementing smart grid systems, particularly I'd say in West and Central, and maybe if you could give one or two key challenges there, and what you do to overcome them. Thank you.
Well, what I can say is that it's mainly the lack of IT/OT convergence. So what does this fancy stuff means? So it's about like having a proper set of human resource that have the both the IT skills, data skills, and also understanding of the operations. So that's number one. So this is sometimes linked with both the human resources, like different departments understanding each other, as well as the respective business processes, and also the way that the business is being executed should be transformed. So we sometimes see very sophisticated, very good systems that is not even making the basic for operations, and it's not providing any insights to the business. So mainly IT/OT convergence from the human resources point of view, organization point of view, and also business process point of view, in short. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I want to ask the audience if there's any questions for our panelists today. Yeah, very good. I really encourage you to ask questions. This is a really good panel that is sitting here. So please.
Thank you very much. Very informative presentations. Henrik, a question to you. You mentioned you spent this this transition from 0 to 70%. It took 15 years around. What about price? What about tariff for the end consumers? What was 15 years ago, and what the tariff level now? What was in the impact for the end consumers?
Yeah, I think Denmark is a special country, so taxes is the highest, or one of the big part of the energy bill for an ordinary consumer. But I think overall, the price per kilowatt hour is the same today as it was 15 years ago. So actually, that has been a great success, and it's based on that renewables is actually cheaper to produce than energy from thermal power plants. So the overall price per kilowatt hour is I think the same or cheaper today than it was 15 years ago. And of course, part of that is also that we have been connected to cheaper countries, that is Norway and Sweden, because they have plenty of hydropower. And when we are getting connected to cheaper countries, then that will affect the price level in Denmark. And of course, the consumers in Norway, they might not be that happy about that. But seen from I think from an overall regional perspective, that is good. And I don't, the price might have gone a bit up in the Norwegian and Sweden, but then they make the money out of it. So.
Great. That was what I expected. What's the average tariff for the end consumers now? Tariff for the end consumers.
I think the price for the energy and the transportation of the energy is about 1.5 Danish crowns. What is that? That is 1/4 of a US dollar, something like that.
1 and 4?
Yeah. Per kilowatt hour.
$1.40.
Yeah, I think 25 cents or 30 cents, something like that,
25 cents.
per US dollars per kilowatt hour. And then you have the tax, which is maybe 10 or 12 cents per kilowatt hour.
Mm. So in general, it's about 35 cents per kilowatt hour.
As far as I can figure out in my head.
Yeah.
I'll come to you afterwards. In Danish, it's we have Danish crowns, and I think the energy is 50 euro, the half of 1 Danish crown, and then you have to pay one crown for transportation and 1 crown for taxes.
Okay, great, thank you. Next question, Hans. You mentioned two cases. Do you have any information about LCOE for these? LCOE, levelized cost of, LCOE levelized cost of storage.
Yes, I have that information, but I don't have it in my head right now. But the LCOS for the Heatcube, I have that. I can find it out and I can tell you later on. But right now I don't remember. But I have it here in the documents. So.
Okay. And Gohan.
And maybe if you allow me also to the prices in Nordic countries. I mean, in Denmark, it's a cheap. I mean, you say that the energy is pretty cheap in the Nordic countries, but the cross-border handling between has also helped that because of the different assets that you have. So you have hydropower, you have nuclear, you have wind, and you can balance that in the networks. That helps also to drive down the cost. And I think that the prices in Norway and Sweden are even a little bit lower than in Denmark. So,
yeah, okay, noted. And Gohan, we discussed about smart grids a lot. What about cybersecurity? Is it important? And do you know any cases where the cybersecurity was create some problems for the Denmark or for the utilities?
Thanks for the question, Cedric. Well, cybersecurity is definitely important, but what is more important is that it depends on what you are doing with the technologies. So the level of cybersecurity, which is has a reflection on the money to be spent, the resources, should be very much in line with what you are doing. If you are doing only very basic telemetry, it should not be the same cybersecurity in the case that you are doing a wide area control system, which will have major impact on the system security. So the cybersecurity level to be implemented should be pretty in line with its impact to the mission critical system. So that's key issue. On the other side, definitely it's like now the de facto approach for many utilities implementing at least a minimum set of cybersecurity requirements for all systems. So that should be over there for everything. But on top of that, the rest should be tailored to the system and the respective infrastructure.
Okay, thank you. And KEPCO, do you have any assets, not in Korea, but in other countries under management, for example, as a KEPCO?
Assets? We
Assets,
have
like distribution companies, utilities under your management, under KEPCO's management.
we have power plant in Philippines
power plants.
and power plant in what is that? The Saudi
Saudi Arabia.
no. What is that?
Emirates?
UAE.
What about distribution utilities?
Distribution in Dominican Republic. Yeah.
Dominican?
Yes, Dominican Republic under the USA. We constructed the distribution network in Dominican Republic.
Okay, no more questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else who would like to ask a question to? Yep, please.
Thank you. I want to ask Henrik maybe. Is there any plan?
Oh, can you speak a little closer to the mic? It's a little
Okay.
up here. Yeah, thank you.
I want to ask about maybe Denmark plans regarding green hydrogen. Are there any plans to use green hydrogen using existing natural gas pipelines, or maybe in form of ammonia, something like that? Thank you.
Hydrogen is, there is a lot of fuss and a lot of discussion about hydrogen in Denmark at the moment. And there are, I could say, big plans of developing a new hydrogen sector in Denmark. And Energinet is looking into building a hydrogen infrastructure from the western part of Denmark and down to Germany. And the idea is to use wind power production from the North Sea and then use some of it directly as electricity and use the cheapest of it that is kind of surplus for hydrogen production and then transport it through a new hydrogen infrastructure. So there we're talking about green hydrogen. And I think it's the plans or the business case is pretty much based on exporting hydrogen to the Ruhr district in Germany. As we're speaking now, I think the plan will be to invest in this hydrogen infrastructure. But I think the technology might not be quite as mature as as everybody wanted and hoped for just a few years ago. But and that's by the way, by discussing how to store energy. Hydrogen is a way to store energy because you can store energy from electricity to hydrogen and then transport it in juice to wherever you want to do it.
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Thinking about for the nuclear energy. It seems solar energy is the way to go, but it's for now technology still takes so much surfaces, and that's also cause an environmental problem. So how to think about the nuclear energy?
That's another good discussion, and it seems like at the moment every male above 40 voting to the right in the political spectrum is thinking that nuclear power should be a part of the energy mix in Denmark. And it might be there will be some new technologies popping up, but at the moment it's not a discussion really, because it's a base load technology, and when you need the flexibility, then nuclear power might not be the best thing to supplement the renewables with. So and then when we look into the prices, nuclear power doesn't seem to be very cheap. So many years ago, I visited the new nuclear power plant in Finland. I think it's 13 years ago, and at that moment it was not cheap, and it has become even more expensive. So in the future, if the prices will go down, it might be relevant. But at the moment, it's seen from our perspective, it might not be very relevant. But we have the election for the European Commission, and I think I see a lot of the political parties are arguing for nuclear power plants in Denmark.
Thank you very much, Henrik, and thank you very much to all the speakers, panelists today. We very much appreciate it, and thank you to the audience for your participation and for being here. That's the end of this session. So again, thank you, and hope you'll come for the closing ceremony tomorrow. Understand probably a lot of you might be heading out this evening as well. But if not, thank you so much on behalf of ADB for having you. Thank you.